ways of, first of all, detecting, we talked about it, storing, the algorithm of working with the chunks generally, yeah, revising them, working with elaborate vocabulary. This is like, you know, a slew of questions that we got, but with one idea. Yeah, let's now literally walk our followers through the process of detecting, storing, chunking, by the way, itself, right? If we need, you have a text, then revising, and also recycling, all right, with some activities. How do you go about it?
Yeah, yeah. When it comes to detecting, sometimes it might be really tough to understand whether the piece of language is a chunk or not really, or maybe this is just a sentence and they should ignore this. So
Mm-hmm.
the thing I often recommend doing is that, again, please be conscious about that. Please be kind of reasonable and rational about this. So just you can take a look at a piece of language that seems to be a chunk and ask yourself a question. Can I use this very piece in different contexts? And how many such contexts are there? And this is, I believe, the key, because if you say, yes, I think I can use it there, I can use it there, I can use it to say this, I can use it to say that, yes, then it is a chunk. But if you kind of struggle, maybe this is just, I mean, some sequence of words, not a chunk.
By the way, why would you struggle? Does it have anything to do with how you speak in your mother tongue? Like, for example, if I don't use elaborate vocabulary, the same would go for learning a foreign language.
So you see, I mean, you might struggle because, I mean, this kind of word combination is not so meaningful to you, and there is no use learning it. For example, let's take a look. It might be just some, you know, empty structure.
Mm.
It is not so useful. It's one thing. And another thing is that it might be not so much frequent. Yeah. So
Mm.
this is just a combination of words. For example, the biggest danger that lies with working on authentic resources, especially these articles by BBC, especially by The Guardian,
Yeah.
right?
Oh.
So this might be just some poetic turn of phrase which has been invented by the author, or some metaphor which has been created by the author, and chances that you're going to use it are quite slim, right? So
Yeah.
there's no use
Or if you're
wasting
really
it.
proficient and you can play with words and take artistic liberty when it comes to using a language, then yeah. Like, for
Mhm.
example, the one that I once cited, I'm sorry, I have too much on my plate. Well, let me know when that plate clears. See? Like
Uh-huh.
artistic liberty. And if you can really incorporate it into your speech, if it's appropriate, then it creates a wow effect. And then a person would be like, oh, yeah, sure, I will. Yeah? It'll create a certain emotion, it will trigger them. Right?
Absolutely. But here again, you have to be very careful about appropriacy, and you'll
Mm-hmm.
have to be kind of very, very sensitive to language to sense whether it is appropriate in this context or not really. And of course, the frequency will be quite low, right? So it's not that you're going to say it
Yeah,
in every.
you won't find this phrase, let me know when that plate clears, in any
Yeah,
dictionary, right?
absolutely.
Right, exactly. So then we detect a certain chunk, we try to attach meaning, emotion to it. What do we do next in your class?
Yeah, so first we detect a chunk, right? And then we somehow manipulate it to understand the meaning, right? Because basically we have this noticing, retrieval, creative use stages, right? But noticing is a very complex stage. It doesn't mean that you only notice something, but
Hmm.
it means that you have to study the meaning, you have to study the use, you have to take into account all these nuances. And personally, I start kind of manipulating these chunks with my students. For example, if we come back to this Buddha chill in the marriage, you might ask these questions like, what happens to people's relationships when something puts a chill in them? How do they feel about it? I just have to make sure that they understand what this means. Or do people feel happy when something puts a chill? What they may end up doing as a result? What can it lead to? Just so that they can understand this complex meaning and this complete picture of what the chunk means. It's absolutely vital, I believe.
Oh yeah, it's code text. You're talking about code text. That's what I love using all the
Exactly.
time. By the way, one of these books that I keep showing you, because they're really the Bibles of the lexical approach. Yeah, lexical
Exactly.
grammar and teaching lexically. I like where Hugh and Andrew say that if you take a very vivid example, the one was with argument, the one that I cited. But for example, with something that is really relevant to a student. For example, a mortgage, yeah, or a loan. What do? You notice a chunk. Take out a loan from the bank. Then you shouldn't stop at it because again, okay, a person can say, I took out a loan from the bank, but how do you say, платить за него, yeah, something like that. I don't know. So you start asking them questions, making conversation, and eliciting this vocabulary. You could say, what happens next? You have to pay your monthly bill. If like you do not settle your payments, then they might repossess your property. You know, so you like literally store, brainstorm those chunks, you store them, you discuss things, and also something pops up along the way. You might talk about their experience. You can ask them, have you ever taken a loan from the bank? What for? You see? So this is how you can learn that, right? You don't need any list then, right?
Absolutely. And even Andrew Walkley actually accepts that sometimes teachers might feel a bit worried because this does take up hell of a lot of time,
Yes.
right? But he says that this is the best way you can spend your time, because here again
Mhm.
you combine the benefits. You dig deeper into the meaning, so you get to understand the meaning better, and also have a lot of emergent language that is super useful apart from the meaning. It's one thing. And another thing is that just come back to something that we mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, that our success in memorizing an item and being able to use it, it doesn't depend on how much you've repeated it, how many times you've repeated it, but it does depend on how much you've made your brain work, right?
Yeah.
And by manipulating your chunk this, we actually make your brain work. And students end up saying something, we've done a single exercise, but I can remember this
Yeah.
somehow. This is
Yes.
what we can see.
Because a lot of cognitive effort was put into it. And then
That's
emotions, experiences, yeah,
experiences.
attached.
The students can relate to that, and they personalize this item. This is kind of the very nice metaphor in Russian that you provided. This is exactly how it happens, right? So this item becomes yours. It's one thing. And another thing, you also remember that some time ago they suggested that you should kind of imagine the situation in which you can use this item. And while you're asking and answering those questions, you exactly put your students in this situation in which they can use this item. Of course, your students might not understand that explicitly, but it does happen subconsciously, and this does the trick. This does the miracle, I believe, in this
Could not
case.
agree more, really. And then, we shouldn't stop at that. In the next lesson, you might want to retrieve it because, again, it doesn't stay with everyone, right? You might start asking the same questions and see what they could say, because then you spoon-fed them those phrases: repossess the property, pay monthly bill, to be overdue, yes, settle the payments. And then in the next lesson, ask the same questions, see what they remember. Maybe you will put a twist on it. Maybe you would talk about your own experience, and then you would like pause and let them say this chunk or gap it. Yeah, take a screenshot, take a literal screenshot, gap the sentences in the paint or wherever. Here you go, you have a story. What I sometimes do, and I used to do a lot when I worked at uni, I would like talk about something like that, and then I would ask students to write, like literally write this story, and like use those chunks so they could like put it on paper and then see what they remember like right away. 5 minutes before the class, I say, now get a sheet of paper, put it on paper. Let's see what you remember. Okay, it's also good because then they write. Also, what I would do is sometimes I would literally say to them, okay, so you have your Quizlet sets printed out. They love doing that. I'm gonna give you like 10 minutes, literally put in, pop in the earbuds, anything you have there, start so you can hear, yeah, someone else. Start like literally speed reading them, but consciously. Like as conscious as possible, as eloquent as possible, from bottom to top, from top to bottom, from the middle to bottom, from the middle to top. And when you do that, you'll see where you stumble, like which words you still probably mispronounce, or something like that. They loved it, and there was so much noise, but it was like, there was this kind of energy, like chunking, in progress, so.
Had atmosphere, right?
Mhm.
So absolutely right. So I also gap sentences. I ask them to use that. I do ask them to prepare some stories. For example, usually I'm this huge fan of making my classes not only packed with chunks but also packed with nice ideas. And we usually read some insightful texts. For example, now in my course we are reading a text about how grandparents can influence their grandchildren, and we all have all these nice chunks like unconditional love, about this
Oh,
extended network of relationships, create psychological security or build up psychological security or shield against negativity or something. And I usually ask them something that, okay, so what were your relationships with grandparents? Please
mm-hmm.
tell us about this. Or what are the most insightful ideas or some ideas that resonate with you? Please tell us about that. It's one thing. And next class, I can do something like that. I can take out some chunks, just chunks from the text. I can give them just a list of chunks and I try them to remember what kind of idea each chunk refers to. So I, so to speak, ask them to reconstruct the original idea, not the text, but the idea.
Yes, yeah.
Because again, it actually doesn't matter what you do with chunks. What matters is that you have to do this consciously. You have to absorb this meaning and you
Mm-hmm.
have to do something that is personally significant to you. That's why I never kind
Agreed.
of force my ideas, but I usually ask my students, okay, please pick one idea that resonates with you. Or sometimes I even say, please pick one idea that you feel skeptical about. Why
Mm-hmm.
not? Yeah,
Yes,
so
and build on that. Yeah, use the
excellent.
chunks to build on that. You know what? Also, what I mentioned, the word clouds. Why do I like them? Because I would put those chunks either chaotically on in some sort of a shape, you know, and I would ask students to have either an on-the-spot dialogue with me on a certain topic, something that catches their eye, or even summarizing. You know, we would start summarizing the plot of the series using those chunks. So, for example, this is like from my book, yeah, from my
Mhm,
notebook,
mhm.
and I have these chunks here, you see? So I would ask them to literally look through them. They are familiar with them. They have already recycled them, retrieved them. They see the phrase within earshot. Yeah, within earshot. And I could say, I can hear you talking within earshot. Like there's, you know, a husband lying on the sofa, something like that. So something that comes to mind. Or I could say like, oh, I think there are some native speakers here in Belgrade. I could hear their speech within, you know, earshot. So you see, they start like dwelling upon either relevant context all around them or something where they would use it. And they see this and they see this progress. First, they're a bit surprised, like, oh, I've learned so much. This is huge.
Exactly.
I mean, how can I analyze that? That's a lot. Yeah. But then they're like, oh, I can use this one. I can use that one, you know? So, by the way, one of the chunks that I once imprinted here was this one: make English time a routine. See, at
Okay,
that
that's
time I
nice.
already understood that. What a great chunk.
Yes, exactly,
But
exactly. Absolutely.
by the way, where can we find chunks? Of course, BBC, Guardian. By the way, I